at one more example of absolute value inequality. So again, we're going to look at where is the absolute value. Well, the absolute value is right here. It is not alone. Because it is not alone, we need to get that absolute value by itself. I'm going to write this here because students forget this often. So let's write get absolute value alone. Okay, that means this. We want to get this. So we want to get the orange thing all by itself. So what's happening to the orange thing? We have something being multiplied to it and something being added to it. It's easier to unadd than unmultiply. So I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides of the inequality. That leaves me with 2 times the absolute value of x minus 1 is less than, that gives me 8. So let's look at this absolute value. Absolute value is still not alone. It has a 2 being multiplied to it, which means I'm going to divide both sides of the equation by 2. 2 divided by 2 gives me 1. So then that leaves me with the absolute value of x minus 1 is less than 8 divided by 2, which is 4. So now the absolute value is alone. So I want you to notice that this here is a less than. So I'm trying to get you to use the language to help you figure that out. So when we did a less than before, notice how we set it up. Negative of the number is less than the absolute value is less than whatever the number was. So that means we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to take this out of the absolute value. There's no more absolute value. So now we can take it out of the absolute value. Okay? So that means that we have x minus 1. We're going to copy this down. It's less than 4. We're going to have to keep our inequalities exactly the same. Don't switch them, because then it wouldn't make sense. They have to be in the same direction. So we're going to set that up like that. So now you're like, okay, I don't know what to do. I have 2 inequalities and so forth. So this is how I want you to think of it. Let's pretend that inequality doesn't exist. So what would you do to solve for x here? Oh, well, that's not so hard. I'm going to add 1 to both sides of that inequality, right? Okay, so we can play the same game on the other side. Let's get rid of that inequality, and wouldn't I still add 1 to both sides of the inequality? So if you notice, I'm looking at where my x is, and I want to get my x by myself. For and problems, the x's really need to be in the center. So now I add 1 to each section of my inequality problem. So now I have negative 4 plus 1. That gives me negative 3 is less than x is less than 5. So there's my answer. It's all nicely set up for me. So that means, let's write this in Set Builder, because Set Builder is easy to take it from there. Then we'll graph it. So in Set Builder, it's going to be the set of x. You always have to have that, the set of x such that negative 3 is less than x is less than 5. Okay. So now to do it in interval notation, it's easiest to set up my graph here. I have 2 points. I have negative 3 here, and I have 5 here. Notice I'm not concerned about writing any other number. I mean, you could put 0 in if you want. Okay? So just looking at this, x is between, isn't it? So x is between. Since x is between, that means I want what's between these two. Okay, so I don't want a closed circle, I want an open circle, and an open circle because there's no equal sign here. So my value of x is all numbers between -3 and 5. Okay? I'm going to write a little note here that this here means open circle, and that is open circle because there's no equal sign. Okay, so let's think about what does this mean for interval notation. So where do I start? I started at -3. Does it include -3? No, does not include. And I go all the way to 5. Does it include 5? No. Okay, so that's interval notation, and what this means is all values between -3 and 5. Okay? This is not a point because it says interval notation. This here is not a point. Okay? And so how do you know whether it's a point or not? You know by context. I'm talking about the interval notation. I'm not asking you for the coordinate or the point or the answer. I'm asking for the interval notation. So you have to look at the context of the situation.